Oh god, that was so good, wasn't it, Gonzalez? Yeah, finally a movie that speaks to us. A gaming movie that doesn't suck. Way better than the one from the 90s. Tell me about it. We finally got a Super Mario movie done right.
Halt, Evans.
What the hell? Hey, buddy, the Renaissance Fair is 3 blocks over. What are you doing here?
I am here to stand hold these two heathens from spreading thy woke propaganda.
What is this, Shakespeare in the Park or something? Hold on, I know what this is, Gonzalez. It's one of those culture warriors. What are those?
Silence, heathen cuckold!
Oh, I think I get it now. Just try to follow my lead. Maybe we can confuse him.
Prepare to meet thy maker, for thy sins were giving wage to woke, cringe communists.
Now hang on just a minute. At least tell us why you think the movie is woke.
Thou thee not knoweth thy princess is a mere soul? The lady fights enemies and carries weapons like a rebellious fire.
Ah, yes. But did you not know that she still gets kidnapped?
Nay, I do not give wage to woke propaganda.
Yes, but that makes her a damsel in distress, does it not? A very unwoke trope.
Harry, you speak the truth.
Yes, and the critics, who are wokes, also hated the movie.
One is true.
But that doesn't change what was seen in the trailers, which was also in the movie, or the fact that Seth Rogen was in it, a weed-smoking woke.
Don't thee just say it?
But Koopa Man, isn't Chris Pratt the unwoke also in it?
But I...
Yes, that is true, but you gotta remember, it was made in Hollywood.
But those...
Yes, yes, but consider that it's also a Japanese property.
I can't...
Yeah, but you saw the Rainbow Road, didn't you? Clearly gay propaganda.
Error, conflicting subroutine error 4 of 8 page not bound. I need scissor 61.
Whoa! What was that about? Oh, didn't you know, Gonzalez? All culture warriors are NPCs. Come on, let's get back to the ship. Man, this planet gets weirder and weirder every time I come back. Hey everyone, Koopa Man here. Isn't it weird how the longer time goes on, you start to learn that George Lucas was right about things being like poetry and rhyming? Like an old Mark Twain quote that may or may not have been from him. The more things change, the more they stay the same. What do I mean by this? Well, let me explain. You see, back in the late 2000s and early 2010s, there was this subculture online called social justice warriors. If you've seen my Gamergate video, you know exactly what I mean. If not, these were people whose politics swing very far to the left and felt the need to make it known 24/7, 365. They would complain constantly about how the things you liked were racist, sexist, and homophobic and how you needed to point it all out. That they were the revolutionaries on the right side of history and you were just the evil oppressor Nazis. Were they right about any of it? Hell no! But never let reality get in the way of a good windmill tilting. This, of course, didn't go unnoticed and it created a major pushback against them in the form of Gamergate, Comicsgate, the Fandom Menace, the MAGA movement, so on and so forth. And as time went on, it would form a subculture of its own. Fast forward to today, and now we see that the subculture has coalesced in the same way that the SJWs did. Years of being in an echo chamber tends to do that. This has given birth to something I like to call the culture warrior. Very much the equal and opposite to the social justice warrior. The culture warrior fights anything he sees as a threat to Western culture. Some more extreme cases consider it white culture, but they aren't even the majority of this fringe vocal minority, by any means necessary. To him, everything is not racist, sexist, and homophobic, but rather woke, cringe, and communist, and it all is in need of being pointed out. He is not the oppressor like the SJW believes him to be, but the oppressed because his enemies controlled all the powers that be. And like the SJW, his beliefs are very much windmill tilting at the end of the day. Extremism begets extremism, after all.
Seriously though, we've heard a lot about extremism recently, a nastier, harsher atmosphere everywhere, more abuse and bother-boy behavior, less friendliness and tolerance and respect for opponents. All right, but what we never hear about extremism is its advantages. Well, the biggest advantage of extremism is that it makes you feel good, because it provides you with enemies. Let me explain. The great thing about having enemies is that you can pretend that all the badness in the whole world is in your enemies, and all the goodness in the whole world is in you. Attractive, isn't it? So, if you have a lot of anger and resentment in you anyway, and you therefore enjoy abusing people, then you can pretend that you're only doing it because these enemies of yours are such very bad persons. And that if it wasn't for them, you'd actually be good-natured and courteous and rational all the time. So, if you want to feel good, become an extremist. Okay, now you have a choice. If you join the hard left, they'll give you their list of authorized enemies. Almost all kinds of authority, especially the police, the city, Americans, judges, multinational corporations, public schools, furriers, newspaper owners, fox hunters, generals, class traitors, and, of course, moderates. Or, if you'd rather be an extremist on the hard right, no problem, fine, you still get a lovely list of enemies, only they're different ones. Noisy minority groups, unions, Russia, weirdos, demonstrators, welfare sponges, meddlesome clergy, peaceniks, the BBC, strikers, social workers, communists, and, of course, moderates. And upstart actors. Now, once you're armed with one of these super lists of enemies, you can be as nasty as you like and yet feel your behaviors morally justified. So you can strut around abusing people and telling them you could eat them for breakfast and still think of yourself as a champion of the truth, a fighter for the greater good, and not the rather sad paranoid schizoid that you really are.
This shift in cultural, political, and media discourse has not gone unnoticed. Certainly not by myself, who's made a number of videos on the subject already. You may remember Critic Culture, where me and Tracer discussed the culture critics of critic culture, false flag calling things woke in media for clicks. Not Everything is Censorship, where I called out people being overzealous on what is and isn't censorship. Not Everything is Woke, where I did the same with the concept of woke. Gracious Victor, where I called for a reasoned gracefulness and mercy when dealing with one's enemies in what was an inevitable victory. No Hate Watching, a stream where me and Tracer discussed certain culture warriors' impulsive need to watch things they believe are woke and bad for clicks and ad bucks. And most recently, Doing the Right Thing, the video on the Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro debacle, where I basically said not everyone who is right-wing has your best interests in mind. All of these videos to a culture warrior would be seen as punching right, which, to be fair, some of them kind of are, which is a sin to the culture warrior. Like how social justice warriors will never recognize the sins of a left-wing activist, the culture warrior cannot see any criticism of the right as anything other than treason. When left with nothing but extremism, you can only become more extreme to prove your purity, and history has shown the results of such thinking. Or in other words,
only a Sith deals in absolutes.
the whole thing reeks of collectivism, which ironically is a left-wing value, but not one that is exclusive to the left. You may remember the neoconservative movement of the late 90s and early 2000s that spawned as a result of the neoliberal movements of Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton's presidencies. Its results were a right wing that were so blind and jingoistic that they'd sign away their own liberties in the name of patriotism and America fuck yeah, blind to the reality that this movement was no better than the Clintons or the Carters before them. The Patriot Act, for example, was an Orwellian, unconstitutional bill of power for the government, dressed up in an American flag and eagle, telling people it's for the good of the nation. For less vicious examples, look at Freedom Fries and Freedom Toast. Another sect of this right-wing collectivism came in the form of the new radical Christian conservatism, which came in the form of shaming people for being inherently sinful, particularly those seen as degenerates such as homosexuals, burning books like Harry Potter for, quote, glorifying and promoting witchcraft, proselytizing like Pharisees on live television on how the only way into heaven is being the Southern Baptist televangelist way, and that the only way you can get in is if you give money now and you will be saved, and that Catholics, Jews, and other sects of Protestantism, and all other religions, are going straight to hell. This is in spite of the Catholic Church being the church which St. Peter built upon his rock, Jesus himself being a Jew, and the Bible preaching about loving thy neighbor as thy brother. And it usually ended with someone being found in a glory hole with a black man's Johnson in his butt. It was all blatantly shallow ways of trying to appeal to patriotism or faith while putting down outsiders. It was this form of thinking, enforcing needless and pointless or even outright authoritarian changes to society, that birthed the internet atheist movement and the online leftist movement, which led to the social justice movement we see today. Like I said, extremism begets extremism. The concept of virtue signaling is not one that's exclusive to the left either, and it dates back to the time of Christ and is even written about in the book of Matthew. I'll give you the verse from the book of Matthew 6, verse 1 through 4.
Chapter 6. Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men, to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you.
The loudest voices who proclaim their righteousness, the loudest of either side, usually have the most to hide. It is unfortunate then it's usually those who are leading the political shifts in either direction. Politics works like a pendulum. It swings to and fro with its most extreme actors pushing it in either direction. It has been like this in shift from presidencies and decades, shifts in the cultural zeitgeist, dating back to time immemorial. And now, because of the extreme reactionaries of social justice warriors, we now have their equal and opposite in culture warriors to deal with, and Lord knows whoever comes after them are going to be much, much worse. So what can we do? Well, to quote War Games,
strange game. The only winning move is not to play.
Like the social justice warrior, the culture warrior lives, breathes, and dies off the attention they receive. So the only way to win is not to pay them any mind. If they call some the wokest woke that ever woked, give them a big thumbs up and then resume with your day. If it's something you like, you're still allowed to like it. If they cannot accept it, that's their problem, not yours. It's how me and my friends have been dealing with those who mindlessly hate on Star Wars in this day and age, which is weird because it's also how we dealt on those who hated on the prequels during the Bush era. Funny that. At the end of the day, culture warriors are similar to Senator Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. They recognize the issues with the far left, and do here and there have a few good points. However, they become monsters, and left unchecked will destroy the very things they claim they wish to save. So in the end, it has to be this way. Hopefully in time we are able to escape this vicious cycle of extremism begetting extremism and social justice warriors begetting culture warriors and vice versa ad infinitum. Until then, it's best to ignore these fools the way we try to ignore the SJWs and just go on with what we're doing. The best revenge is, of course, living well. Anyway, this has been the Koopa Man. Game on.